The metal chair creaked as Commander Krickstar shifted his weight. His blue-scaled skin showed deep scars from old battles, and where his left arm should have been, a simple metal replacement clicked softly when he moved. The white walls of the medical center made everything feel cold and empty. Dr. Velnara sat across from him with her recording device between them on the small table. She was young for a researcher, her green eyes bright with curiosity. She had been trying to get this interview for months. "Thank you for meeting with me today, Commander," she said, pressing the record button. "I know this is difficult for you." Krickstar stared at the device for a long moment. His reptilian features showed no emotion, but his good hand trembled slightly. "You want to know about the war? About what happened when we fought the humans?" "Yes, sir. The official reports don't tell the whole story. The Galactic Council needs to understand what really happened out there." The old warrior let out a harsh laugh. "The Council thinks they know humans. They see them in their fancy suits at peace talks, speaking our language, following our rules. They think humans are just another species that learned to behave." Dr. Velnara leaned forward. "But you think differently?" "I know differently." Krickstar's eyes grew distant. "I was there when we first found them. I saw what they did to us, what they're capable of doing. The war ended 15 years ago. Surely the threat is over." "Threat?" Krickstar's mechanical arm clenched into a fist. "Young one, you don't understand. The war didn't end because we won. It ended because they let it end." The researcher blinked, in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean we never defeated them. Not really. We just survived long enough for them to decide they had made their point." He paused, studying her face. "You really don't know, do you? The Council hasn't told anyone the truth." "What truth?" Krickstar was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, other alien veterans moved slowly through the garden, some missing limbs, others staring at nothing with empty eyes. All of them had fought in the human war. "I was a young officer then," he finally said. "Proud of my service, confident in our military's strength. We had conquered dozens of worlds, brought peace to hundreds of species. We thought we were the strongest force in the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition was very powerful." Dr. Velnara agreed, was being the important word. Krickstar's voice became bitter. "We discovered the humans by accident, a small divided species on a single world. They fought among themselves constantly. They had barely figured out space travel. Our computers rated them as a minimal threat. That seems reasonable based on the data." "Data." The veteran spat. "We relied on data, on logic, on everything that made sense. Humans don't make sense." Dr. Velnara activated a second recording device. "Tell me about first contact." "It was supposed to be routine. We sent a standard message demanding surrender. Every species we had ever encountered either surrendered immediately or after a small show of force. It was simply how things worked. But the humans didn't surrender. They sent back a message of their own. Just 2 words in broken galactic standard." Krickstar paused, his scarred face showing something that might have been fear. "They said, 'Come on. That's unusual.' Unusual doesn't begin to describe it. Our admiral was insulted. Here was this primitive species that couldn't even unify their own planet, challenging the greatest military force in known space." Dr. Velnara made notes quickly. "What did you do?" "We did what we always did. We assembled a fleet and moved into their system to teach them proper respect. 300 of our best ships against a species that had never fought a real space battle. That should have been overwhelming force. It should have been." Krickstar's good hand began to shake, but when we arrived, we found something we had never seen before. They had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. How is that possible with primitive technology? That's what we thought. But every piece of space junk, every old satellite, every asteroid had been fitted with simple engines and guidance systems. Nothing fancy, nothing we couldn't have easily defeated individually. But there were thousands of them? Millions. They had spent months, maybe years, preparing for us. Not with advanced weapons or shields, but with determination and ingenuity. that we couldn't understand. Dr. Velnara stopped writing. What happened next? Crickstar stood up slowly, his mechanical arm whirring. He walked to the window and stared out at the garden where other broken veterans sat in silence. We lost 47 ships in the first hour, 47 of our finest vessels, destroyed by what we had classified as space debris. He turned back to face her. That was when I realized we weren't fighting a normal war. We were fighting something. That didn't follow any rules we understood. But surely your superior technology meant nothing when they were willing to sacrifice everything to stop us. Every single thing. His voice dropped to a whisper. And that was just the beginning. Dr. Velnara watched as Crickstar returned to his chair, his mechanical arm clicking softly against the metal frame. The veteran's blue scales had turned a paler shade, and she could see old pain in his reptilian eyes. Tell me what happened after you lost those ships, she said gently. Crickstar stared at his prosthetic hand for a moment before speaking. Admiral Thexmore was furious. In 300 years of military service, he had never lost so many vessels to a primitive species. He ordered the fleet to regroup and prepare for a proper assault. That seems like the logical response. Logic. The word came out like a curse. We kept trying to apply logic to an enemy that didn't use it. While we were regrouping, scanning for their main fleet, trying to understand their strategy, they were already moving. Dr. Velnara leaned forward. Moving how? Everywhere at once. That's what we couldn't understand. Every civilized species has command centers, communication networks, clear chains of authority. You destroy the leadership and the rest surrenders. But humans... He paused, searching for the right words. They seem to think with one mind while acting independently. Can you give me a specific example? Crickstar's good eye focused on something beyond the wall. We detected what looked like a major military installation on their fourth planet. Heavily defended, lots of radio traffic, clearly important. So we sent a strike force of 50 ships to destroy it. A reasonable tactical decision. It was a hospital. The words came out flat and emotionless. A medical facility for their wounded civilians. But the moment our ships approached, every human vessel within 3 star systems began moving toward us. Not toward the hospital to defend it, but toward our main fleet. Dr. Velnara frowned. They abandoned their wounded? No, that's just it. They evacuated the hospital in less than an hour. Every patient, every doctor, every piece of equipment they could carry. Then they used the empty building as bait. Bait? The structure was filled with explosives. When our landing force entered, the entire complex detonated. We lost 200 soldiers and 6 dropships. Crickstar's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. But that wasn't the real trap. What was? While we were focused on the hospital, their scattered civilian ships had surrounded our main fleet. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, even personal vehicles. Nothing that looked like a military threat. Dr. Velnara waited for him to continue. They rammed us. Crickstar's voice was barely a whisper. Hundreds of small ships, each one piloted by a single human, smashing into our vessels at maximum speed. No warning, no demands for surrender, no hesitation. That's suicide. That's what we thought. What kind of species sends their people to certain death for no strategic gain? But then we realized it wasn't for no gain. Each ship that hit us carried some kind of improvised explosive or virus program. They were weapons, and the humans flying them knew they wouldn't survive. Dr. Velnara set down her writing pad. How many ships did you lose? 38 more vessels, including the dreadnought Mighty Claw. Crickstar's scales darkened. A ship that had served for 2 centuries destroyed by a human garbage scow loaded with chemical explosives. What was the Admiral's reaction? He called for reinforcements, demanded that High Command send everything we had. He said we were fighting an enemy that didn't value life the way civilized beings should. Did they send help? Crickstar laughed, bitterly. Oh yes, they sent 3 more fleets, each one larger than the first. By the end of the first year, we had committed nearly half our total military force to subduing one small human system. And the humans? They kept fighting. Every day brought new attacks, new tactics we hadn't seen before. They turned asteroids into guided missiles. They hacked our computer systems using code hidden in surrender broadcasts. They sent us fake distress calls, then ambushed our rescue ships. Dr. Velnara shook her head. How did they coordinate all of this without a central command? That's what drove our intelligence officers crazy. We could intercept their communications, but they didn't seem to need them. Groups of humans on opposite sides of their system would launch perfectly timed attacks without any contact we could detect. Perhaps they had technology you couldn't recognize. We considered that. Spent months looking for hidden networks, secret codes, advanced systems. We found nothing. Krikstar leaned forward. Do you want to know what I think? Yes. I think they didn't need technology to coordinate because they all wanted the same thing. Complete victory or complete death. No compromise, no surrender, no negotiation. When every member of your species has the same goal, you don't need complex communication. That seems impossible. So did everything else they did. But impossible doesn't matter when it's happening to you. Krikstar stood again, his mechanical arm whirring. That was just the beginning, Dr. Velnara. The space battles were easy compared to what came next. Next? The ground war, when we finally decided to invade their planets directly. His reptilian features twisted into something that might have been fear. That's when we learned what humans are really capable of. The rehabilitation center's lights dimmed automatically as evening approached. Dr. Velnara noticed how Krikstar's scarred hands trembled more in the darker room. His mechanical arm made small clicking sounds as he gripped the edge of the table. The ground invasion, she prompted softly. Tell me about that. Krikstar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice sounded older, more tired. I led the assault on New Busan. It was supposed to be a simple operation. The planet had 2 million human civilians, mostly farmers and factory workers. Our scans showed no military bases, no weapons factories, no defensive systems. It should have been an easy conquest. Easy. The veteran's laugh was hollow. We dropped from orbit with 10,000 of our best soldiers. Full battle armor, plasma weapons, air support, against farmers. Dr. Velnara waited as he gathered his thoughts. The first sign something was wrong came when we landed. The spaceport was empty but not abandoned. Fresh food was still warm in the cafeteria. Children's toys were scattered on the ground like they had been dropped suddenly, but no people anywhere. They evacuated? That's what we thought, standard civilian response to invasion. But then Private Zekhan stepped on what looked like a simple farming tool left in the dirt. A trap? An explosive device made from fertilizer and scrap metal. Nothing fancy, nothing that would show up on our scans, but powerful enough to kill a fully armored soldier instantly. Krikstar's good hand moved to touch a scar on his neck. That's when we realized the entire planet was booby-trapped. Doctor? Velnara made notes quickly. The civilians had prepared defenses? Not just defenses. They had turned their entire world into a weapon. Every building, every road, every piece of equipment had been modified to hurt us. Farming machines became mobile missile launchers. Irrigation systems carried acid instead of water. Even children's playgrounds had hidden explosives. But where were the people? Underground. In tunnels, in basements, in caves they had dug themselves. They would appear, attack us, then vanish before we could respond. We never saw them coming. Krikstar stood and walked to the window again. Outside, alien veterans moved slowly through the garden, some using hover chairs, others leaning on walking aids. I remember the first time I saw a human child in combat, he said without turning around. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old. Small, thin, looked completely harmless. What happened? She ran up to our patrol, crying, speaking, in their language. My translator said she was asking for help, saying she was lost and scared. Krikstar's shoulders sagged. Sergeant Velmore went to help her. He was always good with young beings, had children of his own back home. Dr. Velnara felt a chill. It was a trap. The child was carrying chemical explosives under her clothes. When Velmore got close enough, she detonated them, killed herself instantly, killed 3 of my soldiers and wounded 5 more. A child. That's what broke us mentally. Not the soldiers, not the weapons, not the impossible tactics. It was realizing that humans would use their own children as weapons. Not force them, but somehow convince them it was necessary. Krikstar returned to his chair, his mechanical arm clicking against the metal. After that, we couldn't trust anything. Every civilian could be a threat. Every building could explode. Every act of kindness could be a trap. How did this affect your soldiers? They started breaking down. Warriors who had fought in dozens of campaigns began refusing orders. Some would shake uncontrollably when we entered human settlements. Others became too aggressive, shooting at everything that moved. Dr. Velnara looked up from her notes. But you had superior weapons and armor. Weapons don't help when the enemy knows exactly how they work. Within weeks, the humans had figured out how to disable our plasma rifles, hack our communication systems, and even reprogram our medical nanobots to poison us instead of heal us. How is that possible? They learned faster than we could adapt. Every piece of equipment we lost was studied, reverse-engineered, and turned against us. Our own technology became our enemy. Krikstar's voice grew quieter. But the worst part was their berserkers. Berserkers? Humans who had lost everything. Family, homes, hope. They would charge our positions with nothing but primitive weapons and improvised explosives. No fear, no hesitation, no regard for their own survival. Dr. Velnara stopped writing. That's madness. That's what we thought, but it worked. A single human with a chemical bomb could destroy an entire squad of our best soldiers. They would run at our fortified positions screaming battle cries and somehow break through defenses that should have stopped an army. What kind of battle cries? I'll never forget them. Words like, "Remember Earth," or "For our children," or sometimes just wordless screaming. The sound still haunts my dreams. The veteran's good hand clenched into a fist. We had conquered hundreds of worlds, defeated dozens of species, but we had never fought an enemy that seemed to get stronger when they were losing. Every human we killed seemed to make the others fight harder. How long did the ground war last? 3 years of the most brutal fighting in galactic history. By the end, both sides had lost so much that victory seemed meaningless. Krikstar looked directly at her. But the humans never stopped believing they could win. The medical center had grown quiet around them. Other patients had retired for the night, leaving only the soft hum of life support systems. Dr. Velnara noticed that Krikstar had gone completely still, his breathing shallow and uneven. "Commander, we can stop here if you need to rest," she offered gently. "No." His voice was barely a whisper. "You need to hear about Proxima Gate. You need to understand what they did there." Dr. Velnara waited as the veteran gathered himself. His mechanical arm made small whirring sounds as he flexed the metal fingers. After 3 years of ground fighting, High Command decided to end the war with one massive assault. They called it Operation Final Strike. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we could gather was sent to destroy the humans' last major stronghold. Proxima Gate? A massive space station complex protecting their core worlds. It was huge, maybe 50 kilometers across, with millions of humans living and working inside. Manufacturing centers, residential areas, schools, everything a civilization needs. Krikstar's good eye stared at nothing. We brought 6,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, against maybe 300 human defensive platforms and a handful of patrol craft. Those odds seem impossible to overcome. That's what we thought. Admiral Thexmore himself led the assault. He promised High Command that the war would be over within a single day. Dr. Velnara made notes as he continued. The humans had to know they couldn't win. Our intelligence showed they were evacuating civilians, sending transport ships toward their inner worlds. It looked like they were finally ready to surrender. But they didn't. They sent us a message. Just one sentence. Krikstar's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. "We are not going anywhere." What did that mean? We found out soon enough. As our fleet moved into attack position, something incredible happened. The space station began to break apart. Dr. Velnara looked up from her writing. Break apart? Piece by piece, massive sections of the station were separating, each one moving on its own trajectory. At first we thought we had damaged something, that their structure was failing. But that wasn't it. They were doing it on purpose. Every habitat ring, every manufacturing platform, every piece of the station that could be moved was being turned into a weapon. Crixtar stood and walked to the window again. In the darkness outside, she could see the lights of other medical facilities where more veterans were trying to heal from the same war. I was on the bridge of the assault cruiser Relentless when the first habitat ring hit us. A massive cylinder, maybe 2 kilometers long, spinning as it flew through space at incredible speed. How much damage did it cause? It went completely through our formation, destroyed 8 ships instantly, damaged dozens more. But that was just the beginning. Dr. Velnara felt her hands getting cold. There were more? 17 habitat rings, 43 manufacturing platforms, their primary, trade hub, research stations, everything they had built over generations. Crixtar's voice cracked. All of it turned into kinetic weapons and fired at our fleet. But the people living there, gone. Evacuated safely in escape pods hours before the attack. We watched thousands of small ships carrying civilians away from the station, heading toward the inner worlds. Every life saved before they destroyed everything else. The veteran turned back to face her, his scarred features showing something that might have been awe or terror. Do you understand what that means? They valued the lives of their people more than their entire civilization's achievements. Buildings, factories, art, history. All of it was expendable as long as their people survived. Dr. Velnara set down her writing pad. How many ships did you lose? 2,000 vessels in less than 2 hours, including 3 dreadnoughts and the flagship Eternal Victory. Not destroyed by superior weapons or advanced technology, but by space debris moving at relativistic speeds. That's impossible. Tell that to the crews who died. Tell that to the families who never saw their loved ones come home. Crixtar's good hand was shaking now. I watched the dreadnought Starbreaker get cut in half by what used to be a shopping center. What was the Admiral's reaction? He went silent. For the first time in the war, Admiral Thexmore had nothing to say. Our communications officer reported that similar attacks were happening all across human space. Every major installation, every space station, everything they had built was being used as ammunition. Dr. Velnara tried to imagine the scale of destruction. They destroyed their own infrastructure? All of it. Centuries of progress, erased in a single day. But they saved their people, and they stopped our advance. Crixtar sat back down heavily. That's when I realized we weren't fighting a normal war anymore. What do you mean? Normal species fight to protect their territory, their resources, their way of life. Humans fight to protect each other. They don't care about anything else. The veteran's mechanical arm clicked as he pointed toward the window. After Proxima Gate, our remaining fleet was scattered and broken. But the humans didn't pursue us. They didn't try to destroy what was left of our forces. Why not? Because they had made their point. They had shown us that they would sacrifice absolutely everything except each other to win. Crixtar's voice dropped to a whisper. And that's when we knew the war was really over. The night shift had begun at the medical center. Through the windows, Dr. Velnara could see the distant lights of the space station's other sections. The recording devices had been running for hours, capturing every word of Crixtar's testimony. What happened after Proxima Gate? She asked, quietly. Crixtar sat slumped in his chair, his mechanical arm resting on the table. The veteran looked older than when they had started, as if telling the story had aged him. High Command was in panic. We had lost nearly half our total fleet, in a single battle. Thousands of experienced officers were dead. The survivors were reporting massive psychological trauma. But you still had superior numbers. Numbers don't matter when your soldiers are afraid to fight. After Proxima Gate, mention of human deployment would cause panic in our ranks. Some regiments refused orders outright. Dr. Velnara made notes as he continued. Then something strange happened. The humans stopped attacking. No more ambushes, no more suicide runs, no more improvised weapons. Complete silence from their remaining territories. They were preparing for your counterattack? That's what we thought. Admiral Thexmore demanded reinforcements, new strategies, some way to defeat an enemy that treated death as a tactical option. But before any new plans could be made, we received a transmission. Crickstar's good eye focused on something beyond the walls. It came from Earth itself, their homeworld. A simple message broadcast on all frequencies in perfect galactic standard. What did it say? We have made our point. Leave our space and there will be peace between us. Continue fighting, and we will show you what total war really means. Dr. Velnara stopped writing. They were offering surrender terms? No. Crickstar's laugh was bitter. They were offering us surrender terms. After losing most of their infrastructure and millions of their people, they were dictating conditions to us. That seems impossible. Everything about humans seems impossible until it happens to you. The veteran's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. High Command was insulted. Here was this defeated species, driven back to their core worlds, making demands of the greatest military force in galactic history. So you continued fighting? We tried. But our intelligence reports were terrifying. Every cargo ship, every civilian transport, every piece of space debris in human territory had been converted into potential weapons. Their entire species had become a military force. Dr. Velnara felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of weapons? Anything and everything. Fusion reactors turned into bombs. Asteroid mining equipment converted to kinetic launchers. Even their garbage haulers were loaded with chemical explosives. Crickster stood and walked to the window one final time. But the worst part was their population statistics. Despite 3 years of brutal war, their birth rates had actually increased. Increased? They were having more children during wartime than they had during peace, as if the threat of extinction made them more determined to survive as a species. The veteran's reflection in the window looked haunted. Our psychologists couldn't understand it. Every other species we had encountered became less aggressive when facing extinction. Humans became more aggressive. What did High Command decide? They reviewed all our intelligence reports, every battle, every tactic, every casualty count. Then they made a decision that shocked everyone. Crickstar turned back to face her. They accepted the human peace terms. Dr. Velnara blinked in surprise. Just like that? Just like that. After 4 years of the most brutal war in galactic history, High Command simply gave up. They recalled all our fleets, abandoned all our occupied territories, and agreed to treat humans as equals in galactic affairs. But why? Crickstar returned to his chair one last time. His mechanical arm clicked as he leaned forward. Because our military analysts finally understood what we were really fighting, which was not another species competing for resources or territory. We were fighting a form of collective survival instinct that had never been seen before in galactic history. Dr. Velnara waited for him to continue. Every other species fights for their own interest first. Individuals protect themselves, then their families, then their communities, then their species. Humans do it backwards. Backwards? They protect their species first, then their communities, then their families, then themselves. Individual survival means nothing if the group is threatened. Crickstar's voice grew quiet. Do you understand what that means in military terms? Tell me. It means you can't defeat them by threatening their lives. You can only defeat them by threatening their extinction. And if you threaten their extinction, every single human becomes a weapon pointed at you. Dr. Velnara set down her writing pad. So the war ended because we realized that fighting humans wasn't a war. It was a form of species suicide. They would have kept fighting until every last one of them was dead, and they would have taken us with them. The veteran's scarred features showed something that might have been respect or fear. 15 years later, they're peaceful members of the Galactic Coalition. They trade with us, share technology, send diplomats to our meetings. Then the threat is over? Krikstar met her gaze directly. The threat was never over, it was just postponed. Humans didn't lose the war, Dr. Velnara. They just decided to win it differently. What do you mean? I mean they're still out there, still growing stronger, still preparing. And next time someone threatens them, they won't show mercy.